So I want to welcome everyone to the first semester, the spring semester's Black Men in Justice series as a part of the Pinkerton Fellowship. We have here in the room several Pinkerton Fellows, the community fellows who are engaged in a one-year course with me on sociology and thinking about the structural dynamics that influence juvenile justice. And today we are honored to kick off the spring semester with Shawn. I met Shawn 4 years ago when he didn't even know who I was, and I hunted him down to come to Memphis, Tennessee, to work on some work we were doing there in What is the Future of Black Boys. And it was there that I had an opportunity to learn more about Open Society's Black Male Achievement Campaign and the wonderful work that Shawn, along with a cadre of philanthropists, are doing to change our conceptualizations around Black men and boys, and also to do real work on the ground in transforming the life experiences of these young men and boys. And today, I am sure you will learn from him what we know about what has brought us to this place where Black men and boys are in such situations across the nation, and some situations are really quite favorable and others are quite challenging. And you'll also hear more about the Campaign for Black Male Achievement and get an insight. The Black Men in Justice series was created in part because we don't have enough opportunities to hear about the diversity of perspectives about Black men and their positionality and how they make meaning of the world. And this series, which has now been going on since the fall, is our opportunity to be able to investigate, understand, and delve with these issues up close and personal. So I welcome you all here. I know it's a little bit warm, but we're planning to have a great time. So I hope you will join me in giving a very big welcome to Shawn.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Usually I see her and call her Janice, and we bump into each other on 34th Street train station. And wow, I'm a little overwhelmed. I thought I was coming to a classroom with a little podium and a few students, and I'm sure that the food did a lot to bring people out, taking pictures. And I just want to share. I'm not a big shot at all. Motivational speaker named Zig Ziglar said the only difference between a big shot and a little shot was that the big shot was a little shot that just kept on shooting, right? And so I've just had an opportunity and a blessing to just have some great opportunities and to live a little bit longer than I think most of the folks around this table. I'm only 2030. That's how old I am. And so I'm just honored to be here. And Janice, thank you for your leadership. And I just want to thank all the students for coming out and on this Black Men in Justice series. And I just wanted to pose a question first. And I want to ask anyone just to what comes immediately to mind when I say Black men and boys. What comes to mind?
Incarceration.
Incarceration?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. If I had a board, I would write that down, but I thought I was going to be like the professor for the day, writing on the board. All right, incarceration, what else comes to mind? Sports. No. Sports? Yeah. Incarceration, sports?
Public enemy number one.
Public enemy number one. Gangs. Misconceptions. Thank you for that. Hip hop. What else? Black men and boys. Underestimated. Struggle. Let me get 2 or 3 more. Mentorless. Without mentors. Lack of resources.
And one more. A state of emergency.
A state of emergency. Oh, you got 2. You got another one. Projects. Like projects that you work on or projects that you live in? Huh? Or projects that you live in. I just wanted to clarify. And so, I just think that it's really interesting that overwhelmingly what folks thought about and said were, kind of negative connotations, right? No one said caring father, which I am. No one said educated, which many of us are. No one said loving and sensitive. And so one of the things that we all fall victim to is just to, someone said, misconceptions and the perception of black men and boys. And I lead a campaign for black male achievement. And just a little background on my history. I'm a native New Yorker. Lived in every borough except for Staten Island. Raised by a single mom, strong Jamaican woman, very serious about education. But around 13 years old, I began to hang out and run the streets, so to speak. We moved from Harlem to the Upper West Side and thought I wanted to hang out with some friends on the corner of 80th Street and Amsterdam Avenue and sell loose joints. I know no one in here knows anything about loose joints, and if you do, you can just kind of give me a nod or a wink and say, I know what you're talking about. And, you know, there was this youth program called the Dome Project on the Upper West Side, and they were giving away basketball, sneakers, and uniforms. And my friends told me about this in the corner, in the basement of All Angels Church on 80th Street and off of Broadway. And when I got there, they had given out the last pair of sneakers and the last uniform, day late, dollar short. Now, I walked into this big room inside the Dome, and it was filled with a bunch of young people, and they were calling this guy, John, I need help, I need this. And John was this tall, white guy with a beard. He looked like a tall Charles Manson to me, and I thought, what is this, some kind of cult? But it wasn't a cult, it was a youth program, and the Dome stood for Development of Opportunities Through Meaningful Education. And I eventually got on that basketball team, but I began to dance on both sides of this. I still dance on both sides of the street, still trying to sell joints on the corner of 80th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, talking about pass me by, you won't get high, and all kind of advertising slogans that we had back in that day. And then one day John came up to me and he said, you know, you have potential, Shawn. You can do something with your life. My mother had always told me that. But here was this man that just, you know, sometimes we need someone to like lift up our dreams and have faith in us before we have faith in ourselves. And he said if you spend less time on the corner of 80th Street and Amsterdam Avenue and more time down in the basement of the Dome Project, you can go places and you can do things. And that was a transformational experience for me. You know, I got my first job in the Dome. I joined the basketball team. More importantly, John with the team would get us around and read books, and we read this book together, Man, Child, and the Promised Land by Claude Brown. The whole team, we could not get on the court until we had our reading sessions, and we all had to sit there and read out loud, no matter how proficient you were. And I bring up that story because I eventually came back to be the executive director of the Dome Project. And the young lady said mentorless. And I have this picture up here of who I like to call Mentor Man. And mentoring has been just a profound, impactful element of my life. And while many black boys are the ones that are on the waiting list for mentoring programs, many are being mentored. Many are able to, and I'm sure everyone in this room can list a mentor or two that if it were not for them, you would not be sitting here today. And so I wanted to come with the theme of the power of mentorship as part of my theme when I talk about black men and boys. But the message that I talk about, and I'll talk a little bit later about my campaign, I'm not going to go too much into data and all of this. We see that every day in the papers. I will touch a little on that, but I really come with hopefully a message of inspiration, a message of hope that no matter who you are in this room, you have a role and you can do something for our society, because it's not just about black men and boys. And so the message that I have is that, let's stop waiting for the cavalry, because the cavalry isn't coming. When we look at what's going on in our communities, we are the iconic leaders of today, right, that we've been waiting for. And I grew up in that era, I was born in 1962, and we had the iconic leaders, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackson, someone always coming in that, this one leader. And in this day and age, the message is we can't be waiting for someone to come to save the day. Obama's not pulling up in a limo in our neighborhood to come out with this special program that's going to save the day for black men and boys. So we are that leader. One of my mentors is a guy named Jeffrey Canada, and you may have heard of the Harlem Children's Zone, and I worked with him for a dozen years, and he was in this movie Waiting for Superman. And I love Jeffrey dearly, but we can't be waiting for Superman. And the iconic leaders that's going to solve the world's most intractable problems, just look around you. No, seriously, look around you. These are the leaders that we're talking about. You are the leaders. So I have a slide presentation that I want to do, and I'm just going to ask Janice to go to the next slide. And so I don't know if you can see that, but I guess I'll sit down here. That's my family. That's the Dove Nest. And whenever I get an opportunity to talk to anyone, I certainly have to give props to my wife and my children who allow me to travel around the country to do this work, right? And twin boys, Cameron and Caleb, they're now 10 years old. Maya in the middle, she's 15. Nia to the far left over here, she's not really that tall, she's standing on something. She's 17, and that's my beautiful wife in the middle, Desiree. And is it okay to ask them to pray for me, right? All right, with 4 kids and a wife. And Nia, my 17-year-old, has convinced me this year. I didn't believe in alien abduction, but now do believe in alien abduction with my 17-year-old. But I pull that up to just, it's a constant reminder, and my wife reminds me all the time, that black male achievement begins and ends at home for me. There is a crisis, yes, and glaring disparities across this country, in communities across the country. But my wife reminds me every time, I can't be running around the country talking about black male achievement unless I'm doing what's important at home. And so that's my motivation, and I like to just share my motivation whenever I can. Can you go to the next slide? So I've been studying this book for the last couple years. This is Martin Luther King's last book he published before he was assassinated. Where do we go from here? And he posed a really fruitful question: chaos or community? And much of the book talks about the growing disenchantment and growing disillusionment in the African American community shortly after historic civil rights legislation was passed. And so we can pass policies, but if we don't implement them, and if the same legislators and lawmakers that move to pass policies don't do what it takes to enact those policies, they don't mean much. And he writes about how in cities across the country, growing unemployment, twice that of white counterparts, increase in violence. He talked about black-on-black violence. He talked about the education system and the disparities in the education system. And when you read this book, this was 1967, and here we are, 2013, dealing with much, if not in some cases, even greater challenges. And he poses in this question this whole framework about the fierce urgency of now. And there's this quote that's on the back of, it's in the book, but it's on the back of his, on the jacket. And I just want to share it with you because it really resonates with me. because when we talk about justice in America, the question is, what are we waiting for to act? When we're specifically talking about black men and boys, I lead a campaign that's been around for 5 years. But we've been dealing with this for centuries, right? And Martin Luther King says, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. He goes on to say, in this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing of being too late. Procrastination is still the thief of time. Life often leaves us standing bare, naked, dejected with a lost opportunity. The tide in the affairs of men does not remain at the flood, it ebbs. We may cry out desperately for time to pause in her passage, but time is deaf to every plea and rushes on. He goes on to say, over the bleached bones and jumbled residues of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, too late. But we still have a choice today, nonviolent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. This may well be mankind's last chance to choose between chaos and community. And he asked that question 46 years ago. What do you think we've chosen, chaos or community? Chaos. Why? What makes you say that?
Communities aren't as together as they probably were. You don't really see people going down the street, going to march for something that they feel strongly about. It's more chaotic more than anything.
More chaotic than community. What else? What else? Yes.
I would actually disagree in the sense that I feel that a community isn't only a neighborhood. A community can also be within a school.
Mm-hmm.
And like personally within John Jay, I'm part of Who Am I? And I feel that that's our own little form of family or community where we can help each other out and we learn and we have mentors which guide us. And I feel that that's like, very important within, college life because you're learning what it's the first step you take into the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel that it's not only UMI, there's also BMI within many community schools and things like that. So those are all different communities that help, minorities and people that need guidance or mentorship. So in a sense, the system hasn't put itself all the way out there, but there is, kind of an improvement compared to many years ago. Because for this instance, if we didn't have kind of a sense of community, there wouldn't be this many people, together right now in this moment, in this room.
That's a great point. Chaos or community? What have we chosen?
I say both.
Yes.
For the simple fact, you have a section of people who function as a community. They go to work, they go to school, they pay taxes, they do the family thing. But then you have that other dichotomy of people who is in the street life. And when it comes to living and dying, they'd rather die for certain principles. So it's a mixture. You get to see both. And I think the middle ground is that people is not understanding each other.
Mm-hmm.
People not understanding each other.
Right.
So that's the middle ground.
And those are all good answers, and I would agree most. I would say is both. And I believe that what we focus on the most is what grows. But if you turn on the news every night, and you pick up the paper, and you hear what's going on in cities like Chicago and cities like New York, cities all across the country, homicide being the leading cause of death of black men between 16 and 35. The unemployment that I talked about, pain and despair and the suicide that we are seeing and not hearing much about that's happening with our young people and black boys being in the highest rate of that, and black men getting into their midlife and all of a sudden quitting and committing suicide. And one would think that there's chaos. But I'm here to tell you that we have to find opportunities in the chaos. And I want to move to the next slide. And this is a book by Tom Burrell called Brainwash, Challenge the Myth of Black Inferiority. Anybody read that book? heard of that book? And in this book, Tom Burrell, who ran an advertising company, one of the largest African American advertising companies for 35 years, and he talks about the role and legacy of slavery and how slavery was the most profound marketing strategy in the history of America to get black men, black women, and black people to believe that they weren't valued, to believe that they were inferior, to believe that they could not trust anyone. And he talks about the mind. And when I think about black male achievement, I just want to say that I think what we have lost with our young brothers is what I call market share of the mind. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The summer between my junior and senior year, I told you I didn't grow up with my father. He lived in San Francisco. And no matter how old you are, whether you're 15, 25, 35, we all have like this kind of like daddy hunger, right? And I don't know if anybody here can deal with that. You know, you may not have grown up with your father, but you may know in some communities, daddy could be like right around the corner with another family and doesn't acknowledge you. Well, we all have that daddy hunger. And I was going through that going into my senior year of college. And I asked my father to send me some tickets to come visit him in San Francisco. I remember going out and him taking me around and bragging, you know, this is my son, he's about to complete college. And I'm saying like, you ain't do nothing. You know, you bragging to your boys, but I let him do that. And I remember he took me back to his apartment, and we went into the apartment and showing me around. He showed me this chest that he had, and in this chest was this 357 Magnum. Y'all know what a 357 Magnum is, right? It's a very large handgun, right? And so that was his way of just, you know, he's showing off to his son. And so I was a baller back in those days. You know, that was a long time ago. I played college basketball. And I was convinced that I was going to go show these San Francisco boys how we do it in New York City. So I went to the court, and I was doing my thing. You know, I just walked up to the court, called Nets, you know, I had my Harlem swagger and everything. So I, got in the game, I'm playing, and then I got into a confrontation with someone, right? Guy was a little bit bigger than me. But he got in my face. He was like, "What? What you gonna do? Do something." You know how they, do, all of that. But I looked around. There's probably about this many people in the park that were like on his side, right? And so I had to really eat humble pie. And I said, I wasn't that crazy that I was gonna fight this cloud. I probably wouldn't be here talking to you today. And so I ate this humble pie and walked out the park and went back to the apartment, tears running out my eyes, because my ego was bruised, really embarrassed. And I remembered this gun that my father showed me. And I went to this little chest and I picked it up and I had this 357 Magnum in my hand. And I was just playing this scenario out. I can go back to this park and blast this guy, show him how we do it in New York. Now, it wasn't hard, I retired after selling those loose joints on the corner of 80th Street. I had never shot a gun before. I shot a rifle at camp, laying on a mattress, but that was, target practice. So it wasn't like I knew what to do with this gun. But I sat there for several minutes and I mapped out what I was going to do. And I had this gun in my hand. I think my flight was 2 days later. Figured I can go back to this park with all these people like this, shoot this guy, get away, come back to the apartment, lay low, and take my flight back to New York City to finish my senior year of college, right? So I'm sitting there with this gun, but all of a sudden, in my mind, and this is what I'm talking about, we've lost market share of our young people's and our young brothers' mind. In my mind, I thought about my mother and all she sacrificed. I thought about my mentor, a guy named John Simon. I just thought about all the people that were dependent on me. And then I thought about, God, I had some hope. I had some future. That if I went out and I did this, there's a potential I can be throwing this away. And here I am going into my senior year, and I'm having this thought. But today, think about cities across the country, 14, 15, 16-year-old boys, access with handguns the same way, dealing with beef, but not having that thought in their mind, no market share in their mind for them to do positive. And one of the things the sister brought up about mentoring that does that, and the programs and policies that we need, right now we're dealing with, it's not a gun issue. It's not the guns. The guns are not the ones that don't have hope. It's our young brothers and sisters that don't have hope. Because if I believe that I have a future, that there's some hope, I'm less likely to pull a trigger and shoot you. And so that's why what you're doing right now, education, is so important. When I come to rooms like this and I see young people that are on a positive path, because you know, y'all not gonna wind up on the cover of the Post, right? What's happening here. If y'all are gangbanging, if y'all did something and you got busted, and if you, like we saw earlier this week, if you threw a 9-year-old boy off the roof in Harlem, you'll get on the paper, but you're not going to get on the paper. So one of the challenges that we have to seize is gaining market share of the mind. And next slide. Here's one of my favorite quotes. It's from a book. No, it's not one of my favorite quotes. Here's one of my favorite comic book characters. Anybody know who this is? Who's this? Who's this? Human Torch, right? And the Human Torch, and I believe that nothing happens until it's spoken. Nothing happens until we put it out there and we speak to it. The thing about the Human Torch is that he would never flame on until he said it. Until he said flame on. And you guys who I grew up reading comic books, my sons growing up playing video games, but I was immersed in comic books, and I realized he would never turn on fire until he said flame on. And when I talk about the iconic leaders that we're waiting for are right here in this room, we need more young people, young leaders like yourself to flame on, to speak out against the injustice, to speak out what's happening in your communities. And I know that a lot of you are doing that, but we need more young people to really say flame on. This campaign that I'm leading right now would never come into existence if there were not some bold and brave board leaders and trustees on the board of directors of the Open Society Foundations that said this is something we have to do right now. So my challenge to you is flame on. All right, next slide. So, all right, just have to make sure. Here's one of my favorite leadership quotes. It's from a book called Heroic Leadership. And I talk about, excuse me, I'm a sweater. It's a little hot up in here. I might be down to my tank top by the time this is over. Leaders imagine an inspiring future and strive to shape it rather than passively watching the future happen around them. Heroes extract gold from the opportunities at hand rather than waiting for golden opportunities to be handed to them. And that's how the campaign for Black Male Achievement came about. It's not about waiting. In March of 2006, there was an article that was on the cover of the New York Times, and the article said the plight of Black men deepens. And it lifted up the disparities that we all know about mass incarceration, the disparities around graduation rates, that across the country, Black males were graduating at a 47% graduation rate. And of those that dropped out, they were more likely to enter the criminal justice system, the health disparities. And for those of us that were working in the communities, this wasn't news to us. This was the work that we're doing every day. It was our brothers, it was our sisters, it was our fathers, and in some cases, it was us, right? You know, I asked, who am I to lead a campaign for black male achievement? I'm not too far removed for any of these issues that I'm trying to uplift around the country. And so, what it did, this article in March of 2006, it kind of struck a chord in the halls of, in the boardroom of the Open Society Foundations. And the Open Society Foundations was founded by a philanthropist. His name is George Soros. Anyone heard of George Soros? There was a hand behind there that just, I didn't see who that was, but there's somebody here who is one of the richest men in the world. He was born in Hungary, and his family fled Nazi-occupied Hungary. He wound up going to business school at the London School of Economics and made a whole lot of money. But he had a heart for doing good. He had a heart for justice. He had a heart for those that were marginalized and disadvantaged, and began his philanthropy in South Africa with scholarships. Was very concerned about the Roma population in Eastern Europe. And the Roma are like, they call them gypsies. And they're the equivalent, you know, it's like calling someone the N-word over there, so the Roma's over there. And so his American, United States philanthropy centered around criminal justice reform, ending mass incarceration. And when the conversation began in the boardroom about if we are an open society with values of justice, fairness, democracy, why are we not at the front end of this issue in philanthropy? The data of black men and boys show that they're being left behind. And some people on the board said, we are investing in black men and boys. Look at our criminal justice system. Our criminal justice fund, we invest $15 million a year in the criminal justice fund. Very important work. But here was an opportunity to invest in the front end of the prison pipeline. Invest in black men and boys before they get into the prison system. Some folks incarcerated they wait till they get to prison until they get mental health care, until they get a whole lot of other services